Nobody expected this moment. But when Rihanna's smile suddenly faded and she looked straight at Ellen DeGeneres under the studio lights, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. What started as a light, playful interview was about to take a turn no one in that audience, or watching live at home, could have prepared for. Stay with me, because what happened next didn't just shock the crowd, it changed the energy of the entire show in seconds. And before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to Prime Talk, hit that like button, and drop a comment right now, because moments like this are exactly why this channel exists. The music faded out, the applause rolled in waves across the studio, and Rihanna stepped onto the stage with that unmistakable confidence, the kind that doesn't need to be announced. She smiled, waved, gave a quick hug to Ellen, and settled into the chair like she'd done this 100 times before. The audience was buzzing. Rihanna on daytime TV always meant charm, laughter, maybe a joke or two about her music or fashion. Safe, predictable, comfortable. But there was something different in the air that day. Ellen leaned forward slightly, cards in hand, smiling the way she always did when she was about to surprise a guest. The crowd chuckled when she teased. So, I have something I want to ask you about. Rihanna laughed softly, brushing her hair back, relaxed, unguarded. Okay, she said casually. Let's do it. The audience clapped, expecting something fun. Maybe a story. Maybe a clip. Maybe a harmless throwback. Instead, Ellen tilted her head and asked it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. But it landed like a dropped glass in a silent room. Rihanna's smile froze. Not faded, froze. For a split second, the cameras caught everything. The blink that lasted a little too long. The slight tightening of her jaw. The shift in her posture as she leaned back instead of forward. You could almost hear the mental recalculation happening in real time. The audience laughed nervously, unsure whether they were supposed to. Rihanna let out a short breath. Wow, she said, half laughing, half not. We're going there. Ellen chuckled, trying to keep it light. Hey, people are curious. It's live TV. That's when the energy changed. Rihanna looked out toward the crowd, then back at Ellen. Her eyes weren't angry, but they weren't amused either. There was something else there. Guarded. Measured. A look that said, I didn't come here for this. The studio fell quiet. You could feel it through the screen. That uncomfortable silence that only happens when something unscripted slips through. The band stopped playing. Even the audience members who had been whispering leaned forward in their seats. Rihanna crossed one leg over the other slowly, buying time. You know, she said carefully, people think they're entitled to answers just because they are watching. A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. Ellen raised her hands slightly, smiling, trying to soften it. I'm just asking what everyone's thinking. That was the moment. Rihanna's smile disappeared completely. Yeah, she replied, her voice calm but firm. But that doesn't mean I owe it to them. Or to you. You could hear a pin drop. The camera cut to the audience, wide eyes, hands over mouths, someone whispering, oh my God. The kind of reaction producers pray for and fear at the same time. Ellen shifted in her seat. I didn't mean it like that, she said quickly. I just thought. Rihanna leaned forward now, elbows resting on her knees. The mood had flipped. She wasn't a guest anymore. She was in control. I know what you thought, she said. And I know how this usually goes. Smile, laugh it off, give a little headline. But I'm not doing that today. The words hung in the air. Somewhere off camera, a producer could be seen gesturing, probably urging Ellen to steer things back. But it was too late. The moment had already gone viral, even before the broadcast ended. Ellen tried again, softer this time. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Rihanna nodded slowly. I get that, but sometimes the question itself is the problem. The audience erupted, applause mixed with gasps. This wasn't scripted. This wasn't rehearsed. This was real. Rihanna leaned back, took a breath, and added quietly. And sometimes people forget there's a human sitting here, not just a headline. For a few seconds, Ellen didn't respond. She just nodded, absorbing it, the smile now gone from her face. The band hesitated, unsure whether to play. The cameras lingered, catching every flicker of emotion. Even viewers at home could feel the tension, the kind that makes you sit forward on your couch without realizing it. Finally, Ellen broke the silence. Fair enough, she said. I respect that. But the tone of the interview had already shifted. The laughter that came after felt forced. The questions that followed stayed safely surface level. And Rihanna? She answered politely, professionally, but the wall was up. The moment was over. Or at least, it seemed that way. Because as the show went to commercial, social media was already exploding. Clips were being replayed. Tweets were flying. Fans were divided. Some praised Rihanna for setting boundaries on live television. Others debated whether Ellen had crossed a line. And everyone agreed on one thing. That moment wasn't planned. That tension was real. And the entire world had just witnessed it live. But what happened after the cameras stopped rolling, and how this moment followed both of them long after the show ended, that's where the story really begins. And trust me, you're going to want to hear what happened next. The cameras cut to commercial, but the tension didn't. Not for a second. As the applause faded and the bright studio lights dimmed slightly, Rihanna remained seated, hands folded calmly in her lap. From the outside, she looked composed, unbothered. But the people closest to the stage could see it, the tightness in her jaw, the way her foot tapped once, then stopped. She wasn't angry. She was calculating, measuring what had just happened and how it would echo once the show aired in millions of homes. Ellen leaned over toward her, voice lowered. Off mic, hey. I really didn't mean. Rihanna gave a small nod, not quite meeting her eyes. It's fine, she said quietly. But the words didn't match the air between them. Producers rushed around the edges of the set, whispering urgently into headsets. Someone motioned toward the cue cards, another toward the stage manager. This wasn't how the segment was supposed to go. There were jokes planned. A game. A light-hearted clip. None of that felt appropriate anymore. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to clap, talk, or stay silent. A few people exchanged glances like they'd just witnessed something deeply personal, something they weren't supposed to see. And then the red light came back on. Live again. Ellen straightened in her chair, professionalism snapping back into place. All right, she said, forcing a smile. We're back with Rihanna. Polite applause filled the room, but it was thinner now. Careful. Cautious. Rihanna turned slightly toward the audience and gave a brief smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. The playful energy she'd walked in with was gone, replaced by something sharper, more guarded. Ellen tried to reset. You've been incredibly busy lately. New music, new projects, fashion. Rihanna nodded. Yeah, I've been working. Short. Direct. Ellen laughed lightly. That's an understatement. The audience chuckled, relieved by the familiar rhythm. For a moment, it seemed like the storm had passed. But then Ellen hesitated and asked another question. This one was softer, carefully worded, but it touched the same nerve. Rihanna's eyes flicked up instantly. See, she said, tilting her head slightly. This is what I mean. The room went quiet again. Ellen blinked. What do you mean? Rihanna leaned back, crossing her arms now. Not defensive, deliberate. There's this expectation, she said slowly, that because I'm here, because I'm smiling, because I've chosen to sit on this couch, that everything about my life is fair game. A murmur rippled through the crowd. But it's not, she continued. And I think sometimes people forget that. Ellen nodded, lips pressed together. I understand that. Do you? Rihanna asked gently. That was the moment the tension peaked. The audience gasped softly. Not because Rihanna was being rude. She wasn't. But because she was being honest in a way live television rarely allows. This wasn't rehearsed vulnerability. This was real. Ellen paused. For once, she didn't jump in with a joke. I think, she said carefully, that sometimes I forget how heavy questions can feel when you've been carrying them for years. Rihanna held her gaze. Then, finally, she nodded. Exactly. The silence that followed was different. Not uncomfortable, reflective. Somewhere in the crowd, someone started clapping. Slowly. Then more people joined. It wasn't loud or wild. It was respectful. Rihanna exhaled, her shoulders relaxing just a little. Look, she added, her voice softer now. I love my fans. I love being here. But I'm human first. And some days, I just want to be allowed to be that. Ellen smiled, this time genuinely. That's fair. For the rest of the segment, the questions stayed light. Music. Fashion. Laughter returned in small doses. But something had shifted. The audience wasn't just watching an interview anymore. They were watching a moment of truth unfold in real time. And when the final applause came and the credits rolled, everyone could feel it. This wasn't just another daytime TV appearance. This was going to be talked about. Backstage, the mood was quiet. Rihanna stood up, thanked Ellen politely, and headed toward the exit. A producer tried to stop her for a quick note, maybe a follow-up, maybe damage control, but she shook her head gently. "I'm good," she said. "Really?" Ellen watched her go, expression unreadable. Within minutes, phones were lighting up. Clips were being uploaded. Headlines were being drafted before the show even finished airing on the West Coast. Rihanna shuts down Ellen Live. Awkward moment leaves audience speechless. Fans applaud Rihanna for standing her ground. By the time Rihanna stepped into her car, the internet had already chosen sides. And the night was far from over. Because what happened after the show, the reactions, the statements, the fallout, would turn a single uncomfortable question into one of the most talked about live TV moments of the year. And in part 3, things get even more intense. By the time Rihanna's car pulled away from the studio, the clip had already begun its second life online. Inside the vehicle, the city lights blurred past the tinted windows, but Rihanna wasn't looking outside. Her phone vibrated in her hand, again, and again, and again. Messages from her team. From friends. From people she hadn't heard from in years. Notifications stacked on top of each other until the screen glowed non-stop. She didn't open any of them. Not yet. Inside the studio, the energy was completely different. The audience had filed out buzzing, phones raised, voices overlapping. Did you see her face? That got real. I don't think Ellen expected that. Producers huddled in tight circles, replaying the moment on monitors. Every angle, every pause, every word. There was no editing this away. It had happened live, clean and raw, and now it belonged to the internet. One producer shook his head. "This is already everywhere." Another replied quietly, "Yeah, and it's only been 10 minutes. Back in her dressing room, Ellen sat alone for a moment longer than usual. The energy she normally carried, light, joking, fast-moving, was gone. She stared at the monitor replaying the clip, watching Rihanna's expression change frame by frame. She exhaled slowly. "That didn't land the way I thought it would," she muttered to herself. Her phone buzzed. A message from a producer, "We're trending." She didn't respond. Across the internet, the reactions exploded in real time. On Twitter, clips were being looped with captions like, "Rihanna just reminded everyone she's human." Ellen crossed a line. That silence said everything. Some viewers praised Rihanna's composure, calling her powerful, graceful, unshakable. Others debated whether Ellen had simply done her job as a host. The arguments filled comment sections, timelines, group chats. But one thing was undeniable. People were watching. Rihanna's name climbed to the top of trending lists within minutes. Meanwhile, inside her car, Rihanna finally unlocked her phone. The first message she opened was from someone she trusted deeply. "You okay?" She stared at it for a moment before typing back. "Yeah, just tired of pretending sometimes." She leaned her head against the window, eyes closing briefly. Not in exhaustion, in release. Because she'd said what she'd been holding in for years. And even though it happened in the most public way possible, there was a strange sense of relief in that. Back at the studio, Ellen recorded a brief post-show segment. Her tone was careful, measured. "Sometimes live TV reminds you that these are real people," she said softly. "And I respect Rihanna for being honest." The clip was uploaded almost immediately. The internet dissected it just as quickly. Some thought it was sincere. Others felt it was damage control. Every pause, every word, every facial expression was analyzed. But the conversation had already moved beyond Ellen. It was about boundaries. It was about pressure. It was about what celebrities owe the public and what they don't. And then Rihanna posted. No caption. No explanation. Just a black and white photo of herself backstage, eyes calm, expression unreadable. Within seconds, the post exploded. Millions of likes. Thousands of comments. Celebrities chimed in with hearts, fire emojis, quiet messages of support. One comment stood out above the rest. "You said what so many of us feel. Thank you." Rihanna liked it. That single action sent the internet into another frenzy. News outlets ran stories with headlines like, "Rihanna breaks silence after awkward Ellen moment, a masterclass in setting boundaries, why this interview felt different." But behind the headlines, something deeper was happening. Viewers weren't just talking about the moment, they were seeing themselves in it. The discomfort of being pushed. The pressure to smile through something that doesn't feel right. The courage it takes to say, "No, not today." And that's why the clip didn't fade after a few hours like most viral moments do. It kept spreading. Late-night hosts referenced it. Commentators debated it. Fans replayed it, slowed it down, analyzed every breath. And through it all, Rihanna stayed silent. No interviews. No follow-ups. No clarifications. Just that one moment, frozen in time. Meanwhile, Ellen faced her own wave of scrutiny. Some defended her. Others criticized her approach. The conversation around talk show culture, what's fair, what's invasive, what's entertainment versus exploitation, came roaring back into the spotlight. For days, the clip remained unavoidable. And then something unexpected happened. During another interview days later, with a completely different guest, Ellen paused before asking a personal question. She hesitated, smiled, and said, "Actually, let's move on." The audience noticed. The internet noticed. Because everyone remembered Rihanna. That moment had changed something. It had drawn a line. And now, whether people admitted it or not, live television felt different. But the story wasn't over yet. Because when Rihanna finally decided to speak, not through a post, not through a headline, but in her own words, what she said would shift the narrative one last time. And in part 4, you'll see how a single moment on live TV turned into a cultural reset, sparked global debate, and reminded everyone watching exactly why moments like this still matter. And trust me, the ending is powerful. The moment Rihanna finally spoke again, the world was already waiting. Not with impatience, but with expectation. Days had passed since the interview. Days of silence from her. Days of headlines, hot takes, and endless replays. The clip had crossed platforms, borders, and generations. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone thought they understood what had happened. But only one person actually knew. And when Rihanna chose to speak, she didn't do it on a talk show. She didn't do it in an interview. She didn't sit across from another host under studio lights. She did it her way. A single post. No filters. No glamour. Just her, seated in a quiet room, natural light cutting across her face. Calm. Steady. Unapologetic. The caption was short. Sometimes silence is survival. Sometimes speaking is strength. That was it. And just like that, the narrative shifted again. Within minutes, the post exploded. Not with controversy, with understanding. Fans flooded the comments with stories of their own. Moments they'd felt pressured. Conversations they'd been pushed into. Times they'd smiled just to keep the peace. This wasn't about a talk show anymore. It was about boundaries. It was about control. It was about what happens when someone finally decides not to play along. News outlets tried to analyze the meaning behind the post. Psychologists weighed in. Media critics dissected the power dynamics of celebrity interviews. Social media lit up with debates about consent in conversation, something most people had never even considered before. And then something unexpected happened. Other celebrities started speaking up. One by one. Subtle comments at first. Likes. Shares. Quiet support. Then bolder voices. Actors, musicians, athletes, all hinting at moments they'd felt cornered on camera. Moments they'd laughed through because it was easier than pushing back. Moments they'd replayed later and wished they'd handled differently. Rihanna hadn't just responded to a question. She'd opened a door. Meanwhile, Ellen addressed the moment again, this time more directly. No jokes. No studio audience. Just a straightforward acknowledgement. "I've spent my career asking questions," she said. "And sometimes I've learned the better thing to do is listen." It wasn't an apology, but it was a recognition. And that mattered. The media cycle slowly began to cool, but the impact stayed. Interviews felt different. Hosts hesitated more. Guests seemed more at ease pushing back when something didn't sit right. And fans noticed. People started rewatching old clips with new eyes. Moments that once seemed playful now felt uncomfortable. Conversations that once passed unnoticed now sparked debate. Rihanna, meanwhile, returned to her life quietly. No victory lap. No follow-up tour. No statements to capitalize on the attention. Because she didn't need to. She'd already said everything she needed to say in that single moment of honesty on live television. And maybe that's why it resonated so deeply. Because it wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't packaged. It wasn't performative. It was real. Months later, when the clip resurfaced again, as viral moments always do, people didn't just remember the tension. They remembered the pause. The stillness. The look in her eyes when she decided she wasn't going to play along anymore. That's what stayed with them. Not the question. Not the host. But the choice. the choice to reclaim the moment. And that's why, even now, people still talk about it. Because in a world that constantly demands answers, Rihanna reminded everyone that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is decide not to give one. And now I want to hear from you. Do you think Rihanna was right to shut it down on live TV? Or do you think moments like that come with the territory of fame? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more deep dives into the most intense, unfiltered moments in live television history, make sure you subscribe to Prime Talk, hit that like button, and stay tuned. Because the next story might be even more explosive.